Let's pay respect to Luang Por by making 3 bows.
Maybe I could answer a few of these questions because I'm falling behind in my homework. And then we'll do some sitting and some walking. Okay. Thank you for the insights on awareness. I'd like to understand more on the joy and bliss in meditation. Can you share more? Also, how do we know we are ready to experiment with vipassana meditation? I was told we need to have a certain level of concentration to benefit from vipassana. I was never trained in that way of dividing vipassana and samatha. Ajahn Chah. There's a kind of historical thing around vipassana. I asked once a Western teacher, and she taught vipassana, and I said, why don't you just call it Buddhism? She says, I need a brand. So, again, the way I was trained was that the Luang Por Chah would say that focus and insight are really like a log. You lift up one end, you have the other end. So that idea that vipassana is a separate thing, I could never quite understand that. But it probably has some source in the Abhidhamma, I'm not sure. But for me, vipassana is quite simply understanding the way things are, insight. And it seems to me to focus the mind and to calm the mind, you need some intelligence. You need to understand how to do it. And once you understand how to do it, then you get better at it. And as you get better at it, you have more subtle insights. So I've never quite seen that way of looking at it, that kind of division. And like Luang Por Chah or Luang Por Sumedho, they don't really do techniques. I think maybe once I heard Luang Por talk about observe the breath. That was about it. And so it wasn't a technique-oriented culture. It was more a contemplative culture where you used the daily life and the conflicts of daily life to understand the Four Noble Truths. So I think if anything, what Ajahn Chah said was, he was asked what method do you use, and I think he might have said once, my method is frustration. Which kind of made sense, what he did to us sometimes. And then through the frustration you see desire and hopefully the end of desire. So it's very, very ordinary life. But it also was a kind of idea of building parami, being patient, developing gratitude for what is offered, trying to relate to your fellow monks with a heart of compassion, being patient with your own kamma, being determined to fulfill all your duties. So there was a kind of building up of character around the 10 paramitas, which was quite natural. It's natural for all of us, really. And then within that, the emphasis was on Luang. So if any of you have seen The Buddha Comes to Sussex, have you seen that video? It was filmed in 1979 by the BBC, and we were just moving into Chithurst, and the director, David, I think was his name, he had done it was called, forget what it was called, but he had done a piece for the BBC on Wapapong. And then when Luang Por Chah was in England, then he did a subsequent piece for a series called Every Man. And it was about us moving into the monastery in West Sussex. And if you've seen that film, if you haven't, try to look it up. It's quite fun. But Luang Por Chah is sitting on a bench, and David asks him, so how would you sum up Buddhism in a few words? And Luang Por Chah says, Luang, let go. And then he's got this big big, huge Cheshire cat smile. Wang, Wang. It's beautiful. It's really lovely to see him. And then he goes on to explain it. And so that kind of language, quite simple and direct, you had to sort of get a feeling for, well, what does he mean by letting go? And he said, just let go. And then, of course, from that, from a language of something positive, you begin to see what's negative. In other words, what is attachment? You start to contemplate what is attachment. And the first and foremost, the attachment comes from I thinking. So we call that Sakaya Ditti, which is the first fetter. I making, my making, ahankara, me mankara. And this creation of a sense of self through thought driven by emotions. So is that what was I talking about this morning? You feel maybe you don't feel adequate, say. Inadequacy is a feeling. It's an object. But then with attachment, it's believed as who you are. And then the sense of self comes up. Oh, I'm not up to the mark, and my meditation's no good, and I'm a bad monk, I'm a bad mother, I'm a bad student, blah, blah, blah. And that's what attachment is. And then letting go is seeing this. It's like this. Inadequacy feels like this. That's what letting go is. The mistake we make around letting go is we think that we don't have any emotions. And I think that's a common mistake. So a person feels agitated about something. Oh, Bhante, I'm so attached. No, it's not what we're pointing to. Because you are human. So idealism says you should always have compassion for everyone and through all the universes, through all the different four directions. Then you get the flu. Then you find your bank account's overdrawn and your cat dies. And you feel terrible and you get angry at someone. That's reality, right? And so the reality is always this, what we're experiencing now, good or bad or indifferent. And then the problem of attachment is thinking, wrong thinking, not right. Right thinking is okay. So the whole sense of vipassana for me has been understanding that. What is letting go? And then seeing that my attachments were maybe from idealism, what it should be, or just the attachment to habit where I would be, thinking complaining thoughts all the time, or cynical thoughts, or worrying thoughts. That's what we call anusaya, or the tendencies towards these different kind of things, and my mind would get caught up into it. And then vipassana would be, and samatha would be, okay, worry is like this. And then it goes into thought again. No, worries like this, and holding attention on that, and then maybe taking an object. But it's very intuitive and ordinary, actually. Again, so I've never subscribed to the kind of vipassana samatha polarity. I like to understand more on the joy and bliss of meditation. Well, so would I. Can you share more? Yeah, the problem with describing something is that you try to get it. And if you try to get it, then you're not mindful. So I've always sort of, we all have experiences of certain kinds of level of peace, but if you're looking at letting go, then the absence of fear, the absence of anger, the absence of greed or lust is an interesting way to look at that. And we have those absences. You're not always afraid or angry or whatever. There's the kind of just now. This is the mind. It's not engaged with fear right now. And then the mind's not engaged with anger. All right, just appreciate that. That brings you to the background of peace. But we all like to hear about PT and all this stuff, and then we try to get that, and we get very much caught in becoming. Whereas this, I think this way is very humble. If bliss comes, fine. If bliss doesn't come, fine. Because the background is neither blissful nor non-blissful. It's peaceful. It has no character or quality. And that's another thing that gets intimidating as people do have these blissful experiences, and then you think, well, that's where it's at. But is it? If it began and ended, it can be very invigorating, but it cannot be the unconditioned, because it's like, I think the first time I did, when we went to England in '77, we had no idea what a meditation retreat was. We just meditated all the time, monks. And then we found out about this teacher, Mr. Goenka, and we had a friend, John Coleman, who was a Goenka teacher, and he had lived in Thailand. I think he was a CIA agent or something. And they invited us to attend a meditation retreat in the Goenka style with Goenka tapes. And we did that, and I got quite blissed out with it. It was kind of good technique. But I realized it took a lot of work to construct the bliss. It was a construction. And I really wasn't interested in constructing anything. So then I saw, no. If I can witness to fear and liberate the mind from fear, that seems to me much more valuable. And then in terms of joy and bliss, then I think what's joyous are the Brahma Viharas. Kindness and goodwill is a happy state. Compassion, you might not think it's a happy state, but it's a very loving state. Mudita is a kind of joyous state, but it's also a very loving state. And then upekkha is a peaceful acceptance with kindness of all things. So I think that's, to me, the real, the positive possibility of meditation. If you read Lompo Liam's biography, you're aware of Lompo Liam? He's the abbot of Wat Pah Pong, he's successor to Lompa Cha. He's 80 plus, and if you don't know about him, you might look up the book No Worries on the Amaravati website, or Amaravati has it. So that has his biography in it, No Worries, and in it he talks about his own enlightenment, and his practice is awesome. Just his capacity to stay mindful for long periods of time is awesome, and he does go through incredible bliss, and then he gets sleepy, and then his mind comes to coolness, a kind of silent coolness, and it doesn't change from 1969 onwards. And you think, wow, you just think someone's really, really done that. But following the way he did that, it was always just mindful. So you feel blissed out, mindful, feel sleepy, mindful. So always kept to that sense of the awake mind. Have a look at that if you want. It's very, very. I quite often read. It's very inspiring. I'll do a few more before we meditate. What do we got till 2:30. Okay. How do I know if my meditation is on the right track or I have improved? Well, you can just say to yourself, it's like this, and you're on the right track. Or you can say to yourself, am I on the right track? Maybe I am. Maybe I should read a book. Maybe I'll read a book. A book will have it. Ajahn, am I on the right track? And the Ajahn will Ajahn Chah would look at me and say, are you? He never answered. The right track is awake mind. That really is what it is. Trust in that. And things unfold from that. And only you can know if you're awake or not. So let's say I tell you, yeah, you're on the right track. I would do that, obviously. I wouldn't be saying, well, I don't know about you. I'm a kind person. But you probably ask that question to the next monk. Right? And then he'd say, you're not on the right track. You say, oh, that's better. And then ask it, so really, if what I'm saying is like just an awareness. So when the question comes up, a doubt is an object in awareness. You see what I mean? It's and so is the person coughing in the back, and I do hope your cough gets better. That's an object in awareness. Moods are objects in awareness. Memories are objects in awareness. self-disparagement is an object in awareness. Thinking you're enlightened is an object in awareness. Thinking you're not enlightened is an object in awareness. They come and they go, they come and they go. So if a doubt comes up, am I on the right track? And you know that as a thought, then at the end of the thought there's silence. So I'm suggesting trust in that. It does work. And it just kind of makes sense too. If not, I'll tell you, you're on the right track, and you can ask the next person. I have experienced fearful sensation when my meditation is in a state of voidness or extreme silence. Is this normal? Should I stop meditating immediately? I would say it's not abnormal. I've come across that with people, and fear is an object. So I would say if you can witness it and stay with it, then your mindfulness gets very, very strong. And fear is liberated from consciousness. But if it's too threatening for some reason, then just back off and wait again. So it's not uncommon. Quite often there's the feeling I'm nothing in voidness. And then the mind needs something to construct your identity on top of. But in general, if something like that comes up, it can be very liberating, because your only refuge then is awareness. And then as the kind of heavy material comes through, then you witness it, and it will cease. If, however, let's say someone has been abused as a child, and the fear is embedded in the psyche from pretty serious PTSD and psychological damage, then there's a whole kind of other kind of work to be done. But if there isn't that kind of history, then I would say it would be a good idea to stay with it, but not in a way more in a way of curiosity and kindness, rather than kind of forcing yourself. But it's not uncommon. You mentioned during meditation one should not have an idealistic view of Buddhism, so that when one's actual experience does not match this view, it results in less than satisfactory outcome. I always have difficulty in understanding this. That is, if we don't start with a goal in mind, how are we supposed to know that we are heading towards the path of liberation or nirvana? What I'm talking about is more like attachment, ego attachment to ideals. Certainly, I have kind of goals. And I think about where my life is and the kind of work I want to do. But I'm referring more to like the idealism of ego. I should be a certain way, and I shouldn't be another way. And that's an attachment to a particular mental structure and sense of self, where reading a text about Luang, say, and seeing, wow, yeah, that's possible, or the Buddha, or meeting Ajahn Chah, there is this possibility, then how do I do it? Do I replicate my practice with Luang Por Liam's? I can't do that, I'm not him. So it's more what I'm talking, the attachment to ideals, rather than never having an ideal. The ego sense that can be kind of coagulated on an ideal, rather than having goals. And that what that does, it doesn't allow you to look at reality. So if I look at reality and say, well, that's certainly not enlightenment, that's certainly a lot of dukkha there, I think I'll investigate that, then I can use that ideal very skillfully. But if I have an ego identity, I should be kind, I should be a better meditator by now, I've been at it for a long time, all that's really what I'm referring to. So it's the Attavada or the Sakkaya Ditthi or personality view. But it's not, we have aspiration, definitely. So if I portrayed that in a way which has brought misunderstanding, my apologies. Otherwise, why would you do anything? But then also the language of liberation is a Kalika Dhamma, here and now, not a matter of time. And if I set up my practice trying to get something in the future, where does that fit in? Where does the Kalika Dhamma? If I don't set up my practice to work through time, then also that doesn't work. So what we're doing is we're setting up goals, I think, but always the practice is about the present moment, not about grasping or attaining something in the future. At least that's how I see it. Okay, enough of Viradhammo. Let's do some meditation. I won't give any guidance on this one. Let's just sit quietly for 45 minutes, and then we'll do some walking, and then I'll get back to those questions. Okay, so I'll leave it to you, and we'll just sit for 45 minutes. I just went through all the questions, and how to answer them in one answer. No, I'll try to go to some. I think people have a lot of doubts, and what's a good analogy? Let's say furniture making. I started playing around with, when I was before I was an abbot of monasteries, I never had time to develop some of the craft skills I enjoy because I was busy being an abbot. And so now the monks that I have are very good at doing all the administration and doing some of the teaching. So the last 10 years I've had more time to develop craft and working with my hands, which I really enjoy, because working with materials such as wood or fiber requires an intelligence which is related to the object. In other words, if like this is, I keep wondering what kind of wood this is. Could be oak, could be a mixture. So it's a hardwood, and I think it's a European hardwood. So to work with wood, I have to understand wood. And to work with a machine, I have to understand the machine. So my intelligence has to be applied to the material, and I find that very satisfactory. And I've been learning furniture making from YouTube. YouTube's fabulous. Some of the guys making furniture. And so, in learning to do something, your intelligence has to be on the way that thing is made up. Like if I'm working on wood, I'm not working on metal. And recently my knees get sore quite easily. So in the last year I found that if I was in the workshop for 4 hours, my knees would be kind of hurting for 4 days. So now I've kind of gone back to weaving, which I used to do like 25 years ago. And I've got someone gifted me a really fabulous rug loom. And so now I've got a different exercise. I've got fiber, I've got weft, warp, I've got this complicated machine which has shafts and heddles and pedals and all manner of it. And now my intelligence has to be applied to the truth of this thing. Right? It's not abstract. It's a very... And the result will show me if I know what I'm doing or not. So then I try to figure this out. How do I do this? And how do I put this on? And I look at some books, and I look at some YouTube, and I try, and I ruin some thread and some yarn, and then I try again, and all of a sudden I've got the warp on the loom. Oh, that's cool. And how did I get there? Well, I just kept trying. But my trying was in relationship to the craft, to the material, to the engineering of the loom. So I kind of get that down, and then I try to figure out how can I design, and how can I make different designs, and I fail, and I try, and I fail, and I try, and that was almost good. But always my intelligence is now applied practically to cause and effect. And one of the things I really enjoy about learning new things is the very process of learning. It's quite magical, isn't it? Like you don't know how to do something, you're struggling with it, you keep trying, and all of a sudden you're doing it. Maybe not all of a sudden, through trial and error, all of a sudden you are doing it. It's working, wow. And how does that come about? It seems to me you keep trying and you see cause and effect. What's the result? Try this, try that, what's the result? Fail, frustrated, works, doesn't work, and then, look at that, it works. So in say, furniture making, what I had to develop was the ability to sharpen chisels, and then how to measure pieces of wood very accurately so the tongue and groove or the mortise and tenon would fit well. And then I had to figure out how to use a table saw in a way that was accurate, and so on and so forth. So I developed the capacity to use tools, and then all that comes together in the making of something. So that's one way to look at the idea of techniques. Which should I do? Anapanasati, Metta Bhavana, what would be good to do? Well, I think if you had a set of tools, if you looked at it that way, rather than as just a one-off, you just do one thing, then it kind of makes sense that what tools would be very, very useful would be anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, to figure out how you can compose your mind by using the breath. I think any spiritual discipline uses that. Yoga uses it, Buddhism uses it. But how do you do it? Well, you have to do it and just try. And what are you trying to do? You're trying to compose the mind and collect the mind and bring it into the present moment. And the problem, I think, from the questions I'm reading is always these ideas of high states of mind or fabulous insights. So the learning of how to sharpen a chisel is in the sharpening of the chisel. So what do I have to do? I have to be very present to the stone, to the angle of the blade, to the way I'm pushing the blade back and forth. It's very, very just real-time stuff. If I'm trying to achieve a perfectly sharp blade, it'll get there as long as I keep in the present moment and watching what I'm doing. But I don't look for the perfect blade. I just keep looking, this effect is good, this effect is good, that angle is off. No, okay, keep going with that angle, and then eventually have a well-sharpened chisel. And it's the same way with any kind of meditation object you use. If you're already, when you start trying to get something, then you're not aware of what is, how can you have a good result? You can only learn about the craft you're doing by doing what you got. So if you have a dull meditation, okay, you've got a dull blade, right? And if you've got a mind which is really, really restless, then restlessness is the kind of material you're working with. And that's the idea of always beginning with, I feel like this right now. Now, if you just have some idea and mechanistic idea of how you do this, and then you'll get this result at the end, then you're not really with the material, right? You're not with the wood or the steel or the fiber. And that's why it's very hard just to teach one technique, because each situation is different. But, having said that, to develop the craft of anapanasati, to be able to use the breath to energize, say to use like pranayama is very good, ujjayi pranayama is very good, to use the breath to calm, to use the breath to energize in terms that I talked about sleepiness and dullness. And each of those situations is different. Material is the same breath, but each piece of wood is different. So that would be a good thing to do. Just develop a capacity to calm the mind with the breath. And don't get into too many questions. Well, how should I do this? Just do it. Just try. And then what's the result? Oh, it's not working. Okay, why is it not working? Keep observing. Because only you can know how to meditate. I can't, I don't know how you meditate. And it's your mind and your situation. So trust in your own intelligence, trust in your own diligence, trust in your capacity to see cause and effect. Because we're all bright. We can do this. Whereas the doubting mind is, oh, I'm not getting anywhere in this, and the book says I should get that, and then there are these levels, and that comparison of your own material is like quite it's not mindful. It's kind of comparing to some model you read in a book, but your breath is this way now, your mind is this way now. It's confused, it's calm, or whatever. So on some way of calming the mind and composing the mind using the breath. Metta Bhavana, so many ways that we talk about that. I just talked about it briefly, but the attitude, I think, like an attitude of kindness to your inner world and to the outer world, but an attitude of kindness to your own inner workings, like let's say I get a knotty piece of wood, K-N-O-T-Y, not N-A-U-G. You got it, okay. I've never seen a knotty piece of wood. I can take the knot out, or I can do whatever, but like I was working with, what was it? Hickory. And hickory, you put a plane across it, it just rips out. Terrible wood. In whatever way you take the grain, it just likes to rip out. So I was kind of committed to doing, I was doing a bench or something. And so I'm committed. I've got the wood kind of sized up, and then I've never worked with hickory before, and all of a sudden oh my gosh, this is hard to get flat. Well, I could just chuck the whole piece out and begin again and not show anyone that I put it into the fire. Or I could say, okay, hickory's a difficult wood to work with. I've got to learn how to use the plane in a much, much different way. And I've got to figure out why does it rip? And not that I ever really figured that one out. It's difficult. But I apply my mind to the material at hand. So that's what intelligence is. It applies our effort to the material. The material is your own mind, your own suffering. It's not some abstract principle. And I think if you keep doing that, you do learn. And to do that, there has to be an attitude of kindness. And that, to me, is what Metta Bhavana is about. I can hate the piece of hickory. Great. Hickory doesn't care. And like just to say, I wish I didn't have fear. I could have said that early on in my monastic life. I wish I was like this other Ajahn that doesn't have fear, or this other bhikkhu. But so what? This is the material I'm working with. This is what I can learn from. So it's a kind of intelligence of the present moment, and intelligence of understanding. So metta, for me, is that attitude of kindness. So when like I was saying, I look at pictures, I constantly try to stimulate love in my heart, bring up gratitude, look at Lompa Sameta's picture, look at Ajahn Chah's picture. I get so many pictures in my kuti, I can barely move. And it's great, I love it. And then I just focus on a picture. Oh yeah, there's the heart. And I just keep doing that, and I've developed that a lot. And that's my heart and my pictures, and it's what works for me. But then the whole experience of consciousness is much more imbued with kindness. And then, if there's difficult material in the mind, the kindness is what understands, oh, this is hickory. Hickory's difficult, but I'll figure out how to work with it. So I don't know what ways you like to do Metta Bhavana, I've only touched on it. But if you see it as an attitude of kindness, again, if you're trying to kind of create some fantastic, loving feeling where the whole universe melts in your heart forever, forget it. Because it's just not the way it is. But an attitude is possible. You know, an attitude is different than an experience. So the experience of of anger, if you remember, can be approached with an attitude of acceptance and kindness. And that's huge. That's a huge thing. So that would be a good tool to have and to develop. Body awareness, I find very important. And so the way I was just talking about the body awareness in these two meditations, the heart chakra within body awareness, bodily tension, the difference between love and fear, stress in the shoulders, trying too hard in the eyeballs, relaxing the eye. There's so much in the body that you can learn from, but it's the body you got to learn from, not a technique. So I've learned a lot. Like there's one technique that I read about, which I really like, where quite often we carry a lot of tension in our eyes, and we were trying too hard. That's a really good indicator in your meditation. If you're doing anapanasati and you're aware of your body and your face, and you're aware of the tension in your eyes, well, it's just too much trying. So the one funny technique I read, which was really cool, is you know those big sunglasses we used to have in the 60s? Anyone around the 60s? Huge sunglasses kids would wear. Well, you imagine that the orbits of the eyeballs are that big. You imagine that. They're that big. And then, do you know what a slinky is? Slinky is a toy we used to have where it's a spring that could walk down the stairs. Did you ever have those? Slinkies? So you imagine that your eyeballs are on a slinky. And just boom. It's really relaxing. It's really cool. So, but it's these eyeballs, and it's this, and there's a lot of stress there. The optic nerve going back to the brain, you can notice that. So then body awareness becomes a way of understanding holding, understanding attachment in a very, very visceral way. So body awareness, whether you do Tai Chi, like Luang Suchito is going to be teaching, he does this wonderful retreats on Tai Chi or Qi Kung, or you do Hatha Yoga, or you play badminton. Bodily awareness is very important. So that would be good, wouldn't it? In whatever way. But it's a body awareness rather than just pushing the body. So quite often we push the body for excitement or for work, and rather than being kind to the body and understanding it, we're trying to understand it. But also then, for me, meditation, the background, foreground, that there is the unconditioned, and what is that? And to me, that's the model I've been trying to present. So then there's the simplicity of the awakened mind. What is that? Oh, it is what it is. So those are sort of kind of my basic tool chest that I use. And then my more exotic instruments would be like mantras, or I love to do the Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able not. That's lovely. It's really, really lovely. And that's the use of language, but it's a very composed kind of thing. So as a contemplative, we all build up the craft. We build up the ways we like to do things, and that's individual. And then you just apply all of that intuitively to your own experience. In terms of goal, then keep remembering that the goal in terms of the Four Noble Truths is Nirodha, which is the cessation of desire or non-desire. So our ultimate desire is the end of desire, which is a kind of paradox, but it's true. Like have you when you don't want anything, quite often say, like in Canada, we have a lot of natural splendor because there's so much space, and my monastery is on a little corner of our land is on a lake which is about 6 kilometers long, and we have canoes and kayaks and things like that. So sometimes I'll just go out into the middle of the lake and on the canoe, and I'll just sit there and look at the sky, and just got to get a sense of awe and wonder, and that can really stop the mind. Just awe, wonder. It's like this, bringing the mind to silence. I don't know how much of that you can do in Singapore. But there is that in our mind which gets stopped. When you just see something that is very, like a tree. Trees are magnificent, aren't they? And Singapore's great. But just to look at like a tree, a formation, but to stop and actually let it come into your consciousness. So that stilling of the mind through beauty, I find very interesting. Not the beauty of fashion and consumerism, but the natural beauty of a cloudscape or an orchid. And what you need to do that? You need to, I think, like for me, the word mudita, I've pondered that, and it's usually translated as sympathetic joy. So I'm happy that you're happy. But also, I'm contemplating, why do we humans, how come we can do beauty? I've often wondered, the squirrels in our monastery, do they do beauty? Do they kind of look at a sunset and say, wow? I don't know, I've asked them, but they don't answer. But certainly, now you can say, oh, that's dualistic, or you could say that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Yeah, but why am I sensitive to color and so on? I don't know. But when I look at, like, if I just allow my attention to rest on the shape of an orchid, we don't have orchids like you have, and I just allow that image to come into my mind, it's attractive, but what it brings me back is to the silence of knowing. It's very interesting, I find that. Skyscapes, the lake. So that's part of my craft, is bringing the mind to a sense of non-desire and the sense of fulfillment. Not because I'm consuming a nice ice cream cone. No, that's not fulfillment, that's just ice cream cone. But the sense of non-desire, it's like this. And then when I get that sense of it, then I can always bring it into my mind. Like just, life is like this right now, non-desire. And that's not so much a technique as a recognition of the space between desires, between thoughts. So that, I don't know, that I was just sort of trying to get my head around a lot of these questions, because there's a lot of doubts about this, that, and the other. We have a half an hour left, so I'll have a go if you don't mind. Should we set an objective before every meditation session, e.g. time, type of meditation? I think time is a good one. Like if you set your clock for 3 hours. If you don't, you usually think, well, that's enough. So I would say set your alarm clock and stay with it. Don't kind of say, well, I'll just meditate and then, no, I'll take a look at my emails now and that's it. So I think discipline is helpful. Structure is helpful. Certainly in monasteries we have lots of structure. And then as for a meditation object, make some clear intention. I'm meditating now, not just goofing off. And be that the intention to take a meditative object or choiceless awareness. But there is strong intention when you meditate. It's not so much about the object, it's about intention. Now I'm meditating. It's about here and now, not about yesterday and tomorrow. So, I think the biggest intention has to be on present moment awareness. No, it's about this moment now. Any meaning if we see colors during meditation? No. It's just color. Some people are visual, so they see colors. I don't. I wouldn't. It's just an object. It's just a changing object. Can we meditate after midnight? Sure. Drink some coffee and go for it. I don't. I'm too old for that. When doing walking meditation, should we focus on our walking only? How about breath? Anything will do, really. Experiment. Just try. You know, like when you get a doubt like that, well, I'll just do the breath, or I'll just do. Usually, what you're focusing on walking meditation is the mind, really. Body's kind of taking, and you're just aware of the mind going here, there, and everywhere, and just worry feels this way. That's what you're usually doing. But when you have a question like that, just try it. There's no fixed way, and that's the idea of the craft, and then you get your own confidence. These are the easy ones. I think I got a tough one now. Oh, here, I got an easy one. Take the easy ones first. Do you believe in rebirth or karma? Yes. Got one. Is choiceless awareness compatible with daily life, or is it just for sitting, standing meditation? E.g., can you do surgery, operate on a patient while in choiceless awareness? Well, no. You have to choose, which part of the body you're going to cut open. Was it the left leg or right leg? Doesn't matter. No. The idea of choiceless awareness is that you develop a background awareness all the time, so that when you focus from skill. And choiceless awareness really is the kind of thing you can play around with in a meditation, and then hopefully you get the sense of the background. And then in daily life, you just have the facility of either engaging when the world needs to be engaged, or resting the mind when you don't have to engage the world, because you do have to engage. And I think a good example of that was Luang Cha, where many of us saw that with him, where Nanjan Amaro has a good story where he had to, I forget what it was, he had to go give a message to Luang Cha, I think it was Ajahn Amaro, one of the bhikkhus, and there was no one there in the kuti with Luang Cha, and he went up to him, and there was just the sense there's no one there. And then he coughed and bowed, and then Luang Cha. The body was there, but the mind was sort of not engaged in being a person. And then he heard Ajahn Amaro, and then the engagement. So I think once the desire mind has relinquished its hold on samsara, as it were, then the capacity just to rest in awareness, no need to do anything, becomes really lovely. But you do engage with the world, and that comes from duty, compassion, kindness, social responsibility. So there's the ability to do both. That's why we have, as bhikkhus, we have Dhamma Vinaya. The Buddha is asked, as you know, who do you leave as your Dharma heir? And he says, I don't leave, it's not Venerable Ananda or Venerable Mahamoggallana, I leave you the Dhamma Vinaya. And the Dhamma is the understanding of the way things are, and the Vinaya is the way how you live with the way things are. And so social responsibility, familiar responsibility, and both are necessary. If you didn't have one, you couldn't really do it. You teach us to rest in awareness. In my practice, I feel very peaceful, but I wonder if I am applying enough energy, as no wisdom is arising. I have practiced peacefully for, it's either 2 years now, I guess. I wonder how I can reach one-pointedness of mind if we don't have a deliberate effort to concentrate and only relax. Will the mind naturally collect in one-pointedness by resting in awareness? Well, what is one-pointedness? Isn't it just being present? So that the word ekagata gets translated as one-pointedness, but the scholar from Beijing, she said and from this article, they translate it as one-placedness. So I see that more like it's not about one point, it's about being in one place, here and now. And then if you rest in awareness, you're here and now. And I think the problem is that we don't trust that. We don't trust peace. And so I would say to this person, I would look at doubt. Doubt is an object. Trust and awareness and see how doubt is like, don't believe in thought. Don't go to thought. Go to silence. Trust in silence. And so okay, there's a model. This person has a model of reaching one-pointedness of mind. Am I getting there? So there's a whole model now dictating where the direction is. But if you're taking the nirodha, the cessation of craving, the cessation of ego, the cessation of suffering as your model, then you see, well, that's desire. That's desire to get this model which I should be getting. And if you're on the ball, you say, yeah, but that rests in awareness. And you rest the mind. So I'd say trust more in awareness. I keep banging away at that one, don't I? I'm looking for an easy one. How do I deal with failing health and eventual death of loved ones? Yeah, how do we do that? Well, be mindful now, and then be patient with an aging body. And if you're older, be very kind to your caregivers, because you get better care that way. Like if I've contemplated that the body is in awareness, if I've done that for a lifetime, then the body's decrepitude and lack of function, I have a refuge. I have a refuge in because awareness is not dependent on bodily formations. But if I don't have that refuge, then the changes in the body are quite frightening, or annoying, or disgusting, or whatever. But if awareness is the refuge, then the changes are certainly they're upsetting sometimes. But then you go back, this is what old age feels like this. I mean, it's a really beautiful way of aging. And then the death of loved ones, it's part of our curriculum, isn't it? And then our own death, I think that's the interesting one. Don't you think? Like, I mean, I'll send you a postcard if I find out, but like if I've contemplated awareness is the gateway to the unconditioned, the unborn, and then the body falls away. What's that going to be about? So death can be approached with curiosity. Having said that, who wants to get old? And who wants to wither and have macular degeneration and bad hips? It's not a fun experience. But if you have refuge and you keep using the situation just to awaken, this is the way it is now. So Luang Samedo, I guess he's legally blind now. And he's got terrible balance, but he doesn't have pain. He's a really lucky man that way. He hasn't got much energy, but he's the happiest man. He's the happiest man, and stuff doesn't work. So how do you deal with the future? You deal with now, and you keep finding refuge. And that'll take you anywhere. Life is always the context of situations. You never know how it's going to open up. But if you know how to rest the mind in awareness, then we're very adaptable. We're very adaptable. Same old question. Same old doubt. Hang in there. I'll get a good one. They're all good. That's a bit wrong. Could you provide some explanation of non-becoming and non-resistance and how it relates to walking meditation. So, what I'm referring to is the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths there is the Noble Truth of suffering. There's a Noble Truth of the cause of suffering, which is attachment to desire. And then desire is understood as desire which is conjoined with ignorance. So there's wise desire and there's desire functioning from ignorance and not knowing the way things are. And then that desire is divided into three parts: bhava, vibhava, and kamatanha. You probably know all this. Bhava is the desire to become, or to get, or to accumulate. Vibhava is the desire to get rid of, repress, annihilate. And then kamatanha is just the consuming of experience all the time, or sense desire. So when I use the word non-resistance and non-becoming, I'm trying to create a counterpoint to bhava and vibhava. Bhava is becoming, so the way my mind works is if I put in non-becoming, that becomes a mirror to becoming. So if I'm trying to get something, even subtly, then I say non-becoming. Then I notice the tension of trying to become. And then the other, if I'm resisting something like pain or some thinking or what, I put non-resistance. And that makes me relax more. So the language is fits, for me, around the Four Noble Truths. So that applies to walking meditation, talking with your neighbors, because it's all the time. And then again, it's two words, but they might be quite useful to constantly bring up, because you see what the teaching is doing, it's trying to, we know this, it's trying to bring these complex life situations we're in to some fundamental principles. So all of us have different conditioning from childhood and different challenges we're facing, and that's the superficial part of our lives where we practice dana and sila, not superficial, the surface. But then underneath it are some really basic principles of why we suffer, and those principles would be described in the Four Noble Truths. And if we can get a hold of those before the narratives of our life manifest, then we have a more fundamental way of liberating ourselves. So I might want to become successful, I might want to attain jhana, I might want to build a better table, and that wanting would be like ego wanting, ignorant wanting. Like for me, say, making furniture. I've had a bad habit a long time. I get 90% finished, and I want to rush to finish it. And then I mess up the oiling or something, and it's because I want to get it finished. That's bhava. I just do it. I want to get finished. That's bhava. So in even that little way, I can learn. Or let's say sickness. I don't want sickness. You kind of resist it. No, sickness feels this way. So that language is just getting me deeper into the very causes of suffering, rather than just the personal narratives. You're with Uncle Harry. Is there anyone called Harry here? And Uncle Harry is now, doing something again. There he goes again. It's Christmas time or Chinese New Year, whatever you got, and he's really kind of irritating you. And what's there? Non-resistance. But I don't like him. Non-resistance. So then you look at resistance. So it's not just Uncle Harry. It's about your very makeup in terms of personal relationships, and you see the more fundamental aspect of suffering. So that's why the teaching's so brilliant. The Buddha had this genius of figuring out a way to point to humanity, a way out of suffering. And yet all humanity is so different. Our cultures are different, and yet this fits all humanity. It was a brilliant teaching, really brilliant. And it deals with something we all want to be free from suffering. I'm looking for a sweet one. Sorry. I'm a bit lazy. Great questions. I better answer one soon. I know the suspense is killing you. Is it normal to experience a very alert, active mind at the end of each day at retreat? I actually have difficulty falling asleep. Yeah, it's quite normal. Your sleep patterns can change to a lot of brightness. So then, maybe just let go of what your models of the hours of sleep you need, and reconsider that maybe in a time of retreat you have a vitality in the mind that is now not exhausted through too much interaction with personal problems. Then I would say do yoga nidra. Like your body, it's hard to hold a body up that many hours, but see if you can develop yoga nidra. And quite often, once you get into yoga nidra, you can do 2 hours of meditation without much hassle. And then if you don't get enough sleep, don't worry about it. Just come late. No one's going to arrest you. So I feel that if your mind has a certain amount of brightness and interest, then extend that period, because it's a valuable period in your practice. And don't worry about, if you have to go to work, you have to go to work and so on. But if you can, take the opportunity and practice into the night. Certainly we were encouraged to do that. And then the next day, do the best you can. We did a lot of nighttime practice because it was so hot, and the silence of the night and people not around, it can be very, very fruitful. So do go for it. So someone said she can't meditate as she hears a tinnitus-like sound. The teacher told her to find out about the sound of silence the Luang Por Sumedho speaks about. I do hear the sound of silence often, especially when it's quieter. How do I use the sound of silence in meditation? So those of you who followed Luang Por Sumedho's teachings over the years, you probably know he talks about the sound of silence. And he doesn't talk about it so much anymore. He talks about silence. I guess because that's a sound too. But so tinnitus, from what I understand, that people have it. It's an aggravation of the nervous system in the ears, and that's different. This is more when the mind is really empty of thought and relaxed and open. And then there's a kind of a background sense of vibratory sound, almost electronic. What is that? Don't know. Some people say it's the nervous system. Some people say it's God. Well, it doesn't really matter the way Luang Por is taught. I don't use it that much. I do hear it, but it's a way of just recognizing. Oh, this is an open state. The mind is open now. It's not engaged with objects, and then use that to rest the mind, I would say. So you probably know the story, but when he was, I think when he was at Samanera, he first began to hear that very strongly, and then in Hampstead, in London. He was walking along Hampstead, Haverstock Hill, one of the streets where the Vihara was, and this sound came very strongly into his mind. And he thought, I think I use that as a kind of sound nimitta, I suppose that you could say that. And then he just developed it, like he relaxed the mind in the tube, in the metro, which is very, very noisy, and he just relaxed the mind into that sound. He sometimes would be naughty and use it for committee meetings. He didn't want to listen to anyone. or the cicadas would be ringing and he'd just hear that sound of silence. So he used it a way to really compose and collect the mind into the present moment in a very open and an empty way, in the sense he's not using an object per se to focus on. So I would say, how would I say that? The sound of silence was indicative, a sign of a relaxed and open mind, and then he stayed with that. I haven't developed it the way he has. So if you're interested, there's lots of literature of his and talks in that way. I'm happy I have so many choices here. When I understand more of the Dhamma, I get more disillusioned with samsara, and that makes me quite sad sometimes. How do I keep a more balanced view? Well, yeah, samsara is a bummer. But there is compassion. So, to see the limitations of samsara is a good thing, but to get depressed is not a good thing. So I think the attitude switches from one of getting something out of sense experience to giving something back to culture. And that's Katanyu Katavedi, gratitude and giving back. So gratitude and the activity of giving back because of the gratitude. We talk a lot about that. Ajahn Liam talks a lot about Katanyu Katavedi. So service and compassion, and that gives meaning to samsaric life. I think all of us know that accumulation and sense distraction is pretty meaningless, really. But that doesn't mean we have to fall into a kind of rejection of samsara. But do be careful of the literature you read. Do you know what doom scrolling is? Do you have that word? Doom scrolling. Scrolling is what? You keep going through website to website. So you go to all the worst conflicts in the world. Rape and murder and war. And you keep doing that. That's called doom scrolling. And it leads to depression. So the world seems hopeless. Or all the news sites now tell us about the weather events and that the world is melting. So it may be so, but so you want to be careful of what you put in your mind, and you want to be informed, but just to always bring up the negativity of samsara is not a good thing. But then also you have like Firefly building, 7 schools in Laos, or how many last year, and so kind of keep the mind on track for goodness and really the beauty of humanity, because humanity is, it's a mixed bag. So putting wholesome ideas into the mind and just seeing the limits of samsara. But samsara really is the arising and ceasing of sense experience, the world as you experience it inwardly, and the outer world is as it is. So a disenchantment with samsara's nibbida, and it's actually a kind of a peaceful possibility that, like Lompa Putatasa, he had his phrase, "Oh, joy at last to know there's no happiness in the world." That's a nice, confusing statement. Oh, joy at last to know there's no happiness in this world. Does that mean I can't eat ice cream? No. It means you don't have to. Your real home is already here. You don't have to go out. It's already here, and that's a joy. So finding refuge and resting in awareness is a kind of joyful thing. Oh, great. And then you participate in the world of samsara, but that's not, where the liberation or freedom lies. So Lompo Sameda was asked, I don't know if you've been watching his talks, but I think 2 months ago Ajahn Asoko challenged them with Ajahn Asoko sets up these titles for Lompo Sameda, and this title, you probably saw it, says, "Do Arahants like ice cream?" I haven't heard yet. I'll find out shortly. So, oh joy at last to know there's no happiness in this world. It's not really about sense happiness. It's about the heart which doesn't need anything. And that's, to me, that's resting in awareness. And then there's a real joy in that kind of, I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to become anything. I don't have to figure anything out. It's just like this. I mean, it's a really lovely, lovely prospect. But I do have to make sure that I go to my dental appointments, and I have to make sure that, I I brush my teeth. So there is that. But as a kind of, I think the word refuge for me is more and more meaningful. When I first started, and like Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, kind of did it because everyone else was doing it. And then Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, yeah, okay, right. But I don't think I really got it. But now when I just say it's like this, then Dharma is this. And knowing is this. And that refuge is tremendously peaceful. And nowhere really to go. And then the desire mind, of course, with its doubt and its preferences and its habits, gets in there and creates a sense of self. So for me, like resting, of course I've been at it a while, so that helps. And in the beginning I didn't understand what that meant. Anyway, shall we cash in our chips and perhaps chant the Metta Sutta? Page 36. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. And a closing homage. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakatoa Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipannawa Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sāṅgham Namāmi.
Let's pay respect to Luang Por by making 3 bows.
Okay, see you tomorrow.